Hello, welcome to the Hive With Us Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Martinez. Today we have a special guest. He's another land investor. You know we love land investors. But his name is Dan Haberkost. Part of the country you from, Dan?
Originally from Ohio. I live in San Diego now, but lived in Colorado for years after college and moved out here this year.
I did not know you were in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know. We should get lunch because I live like an hour from San Diego.
Oh, where at?
I live by Temecula.
Oh, sure. Okay. I just went up to Big Bear for Labor Day weekend, so I probably drove right by you. Absolutely.
You did. I didn't know you were this close. This is what we do on the podcast. We find out these things. Then we work it out. Yeah, we can definitely get some. I go to San Diego like once a month. Do you know Steve Anderson by chance?
No, I don't think so.
So Steve Anderson, he runs a meetup in San Diego that I attend once a month. It's like the first or second Thursday of the month. But I go to his meetup. That's the only time I go to San Diego. And I don't go to LA either. So it's just
I don't blame you on not going to LA.
You know how it is.
Yeah.
Like you only need to drive whenever you need to drive, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about land. How long you've been doing real estate, and how long you've been doing land? Because sometimes that's two different answers for a lot of people.
Yeah, I started buying rentals slowly in 2018, my last year of college, just via house hack. I was trying to do a house hack or two every year. Quickly realized the low and no money down thing isn't really applicable to buy and hold real estate beyond a couple small properties. And so I figured out I need to make money more than just a middle-class job, because that's what I had at the time. And so speaking of meetups, I was living in Colorado at the time, and I went to a meetup in Colorado Springs, and I met a guy who'd been doing land and development for the last 45, 50 years, longer than I'd been alive. And I'd go down to Pueblo, Colorado every weekend, and I'd help him in his business. I'd help just any way I could to learn from him. And he was doing simple infill new construction. And so he started teaching me how to do that. I would help him finding real, people to buy his houses, and eventually to find the land to do the builds. And so we started doing some projects together. I learned the simple infill new construction, but more than anything, I learned how to go direct to seller for land. So that ultimately started in 2019, and that's when I started Front Range Land. And so now Front Range Land is the active land business that has been the way of scaling my income to buy more and more rental properties over these last 6 years.
Gotcha. So you're straight out of college, so you're probably 28, 29?
Yeah, 28 now, yeah.
Oh, congratulations. I wish, it's always, when I was younger, I wish I would have found this.
Sure.
No, yeah. It's good. I think I found land when I was 26 myself, so I've been
still pretty young.
I've been doing it for 6 years, so it's been a very interesting journey, but it's opened my eyes to a lot of it gave me perspective. I think it's a lot of people don't have, because land is a different asset class, and a lot of people don't understand it in a lot of different ways, and a lot of people can't wrap their head around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So coming from houses to land, what was that transition like for you? As far as, like a big learning curve, or was it? I mean, you had that little intermediate time learning from how to do info lots, so it kind of helped out a little bit. But
yeah, in hindsight, I think I got very lucky. Speaking of, I wish I knew what I knew now. When I first started mailing, it was in Pueblo, West Colorado. I could send 100 mailers and get a deal at 30 to 50 cents on the dollar, and I didn't know what I had then because I had no point of reference, and I came from a pretty scarce background, so I didn't really understand the difference between spending money and investing money. And so I didn't know what I had. And so I flipped almost the first 100 lots were all just infill flips. I did that in Pueblo West along with a few new construction projects at a time, and, kept buying rental properties, and that was going great. And then in right at the beginning of 2022, with no warning, the Metro District, which is what the governing body for Pueblo West, they just shut off all new water taps. Because as anyone out west can say, water is a scarce thing. And so no warning. Sorry, we're running out of water taps. We haven't managed this right. We'll let you know. And so in one moment, I thought my business was screwed, at least as far as the land side of things. And I had a lot of cash in lots and projects in process. Well, over the course of the next 8 weeks, it came to light that they were opening up the water taps at a much higher price and only with a small amount allocated every year, but the lots weren't worthless. But that was the impetus, like, I got to expand. So immediately started marketing in Florida, flipped a lot more infill lots there. And so in several hundred deals, a lot of it has been just simple infill lots, but more recently in the last, year or two, buying larger acreage. We got 35 acres under contract in Florida, and bigger pieces like that. But
that's a big deal for Florida. 35 acres in Florida is a big deal.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's got a dilapidated shed, it's got a bunch of crap on it. We're working on getting cleaned up as efficiently as we can. But yeah, it's in an area where there aren't a ton of parcels that big. So that's a promising one. But to answer your question more specifically, it was a slow and steady transition. And it was kind of forced where that market really died, at least for just simple buying and selling of land after the water tap thing. And so I had to expand, and then it has gotten more competitive. It's not competitive like other real estate assets, but just buying an infill lot at 40 cents on the dollar isn't quite as easy as it used to be. And then I'm continually doing new construction. I'll say I am excited again about new construction because lumber has come down. So I have a new contractor, and this is still in Colorado in Pueblo West, that I tested out with just a simple duplex build. They're just finishing it. They're right within budget. I'm just keeping this one. Great. We got it done in about 4.5 months. We'll see when we actually get the CO. But going to do a number of infill spec builds going into next year as well, because that's just a simple system. So anyways, I'll pause there.
No, I like I said, I've never built anything from ground up. Most we've done is we're doing some roads and some stuff, and we've thrown in some mobile homes, but I've never done anything ground up 100%. So it's new stuff for me. So I think having the right contractor makes it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. That is everything. Yeah,
that's the whole game.
Yeah.
If you have the wrong contractor, you're in the wrong deal.
Yes,
you could have bought the deal right and everything, and it blows up.
Yeah, and finding a contractor who wants to work with an investor, because you talk to a lot of contractors, and they'll just give you the mom and pop price that's as high as they can possibly mark it up. You got to find the contractor that's okay with, it's going to be, and you have to make good on this, but all right, I'm just going to build you this commoditized product as an investor. And I don't have to deal with any bullshit that would come with, building a dream home for an end user, and I'll just charge you, X fee. And so for this duplex, it's a father-daughter contractor team. They charged me a $50,000 fee, and I got it done well below appraised value. And they were happy, though, because they're not dealing with clients. They just I send them the draws. I just double-check their numbers and everything are where they're supposed to be. And so it's much easier for them. And not every contractor wants to do that. So you've got to find the ones that are happy to build for investors with an arrangement like that.
That's good. I think I don't like dealing with contractors. They can be a pain, but I mean, I think if you find the right one, like I said, hopefully don't get too complacent. You can do a lot of business with them and keep it going.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think you get a little steamroller going and people get a little antsy.
Yeah. I can tell you in 2021, I had to bail a contractor out of jail. So I learned about the bail system that year. Didn't know anything about that.
The real estate business has so many, you learn a lot about a lot of different things when you deal with different situations and different transactions. One of my first deals, never bought any real estate, nothing at all. I bought a property that had a squatter in it that was family, and they didn't want to deal with it. So I had to evict the family member from their squatter house, and that was very interesting. I was I wasn't the landlord, but I had them sign a landlord arrangement, so I didn't want to. Who are you?
Yeah. Fun.
But you got to deal with fun stuff throughout the journey. And then the deal I had in Florida, they were on the property and they wanted time to sit on the property. So we agreed on the price, agreed on a holdback, and then we gave them some money up front to start the move, and then we're gonna give them the rest whenever they left. And you're stealing from us, you're doing fraud. I'm like, just do your side of the agreement, and I'll pay you. And we ended up we told them I'll give you an extra $10,000 just to leave, based on the original agreement. I'm like, okay. And they left me a burnout RV on that property.
Oh boy. Wow.
So you deal with a lot of different curveballs in this business, and it's fun. It's fun.
Can be. Well, I think that example and some of the ones I could tell you, important lesson is you got to put aside your ego and put aside what you think is right in any given situation. What's the best way to just get this freaking transaction done? Like what you just said. Of course, it sounds like you were in the right. They weren't doing what they said they would, but the consequence of, or the pain in the ass to show that or go through it's not worth it. It was easier just to give them 10 grand and walk away. And that's a lesson I think every business owner has to learn, where you got to put aside, even if you feel justified, how do I just get this done and move on so it doesn't end up going to court or taking just huge amounts of time and effort.
Absolutely. That's always the biggest thing. Is it worth the squeeze? So tell me a little about your bigger land deals that you're working, and what was the thought process to get into bigger land?
Yeah, so I have done, to be clear, I try to be transparent. I have not done any like making $500,000 doing a subdivide, anything that size yet, working on it, but I've done hundreds of the land flips that are the 10 to 30 with some outliers, some bigger outliers on both sides. So working on acreage in Florida, we can get bigger spreads like that 35 acres. Should be able to sell that in the low 200s. We have it under contract at 135. If we do spend a little money to clean it, should be able to sell it in the high 200s. So what bigger acreage is one of the main ways we're working to get bigger spreads right now. And then we're really trying to get parcels in eastern Colorado, El Paso County, if you're at all familiar with that. There's all these people that are moving east outside of Colorado Springs, outside of Denver, and commuting into town. And it's very easy to do subdivides out there, but it's really competitive to get the land. So marketing hard out there, looking on the MLS, because sometimes deals do pop up like you talked about on our podcast, and trying to secure pieces out there, because that's an area I know very, very, very well. I know the demand. I know people can get a well drilled, get septic put in, all that sort of thing, if we decide to actually bring in modulars, but there's also just money to be made just doing the subdivides. And then for me, those spec homes are also a means of doing slightly larger deals with a bigger spread, because that's a simple system that I already know how. So really, I'm just trying to layer on top of the $10,000 to $20,000 deals these various higher profit strategies. So those spec homes can 60 to 70 each is pretty reasonable. So starting several of those going into next year, and then now those subdivisions could be several hundred to $1 million, depending on how big of a parcel we're able to secure. So to be determined there, because we're actively working on getting one of those under contract.
I think one of the main things about land is you have to find your own avenue to value add, and you can layer on the value add like you're building. I think it's great. How much are you adding just by doing a spec home on your property? Because I know you're holding these as rentals, but what's that potential value you're creating just by doing that value add?
Yeah, so the duplex should be all in. Let's see, I spent 20 on the land, water tap, plans, GC fee and everything was 420, so 440, and then with debt service and everything, it should be like 455, 460, and then the contractor built and sold a couple of those at 580. So I think that's going to have, I think it's going to appraise a little bit lower than that, because we're just waiting on the last few things to get the CO and refi and get the appraisal. So in my mind, I'm calling it like 550, 560, so about 100. And then on the single family specs that I'm going to do going into next year, I got a couple lots set up for that. All in their cost 260. I spent 15 to 20-ish on the land, so just call it 280. With debt service and everything, call it 295, and then we'll sell that around 375, 380. So after realtor fees and all that, 60 to 65-ish in there per the single family builds.
I like creating I think us as land guys, and I think you're kind of taking a step further than a lot of us, is we're actually creating affordable housing in their own little way. So you're creating housing in general, which is huge. Yeah. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
I think everybody, all the land people, they kind of play their own little level of affordable housing in some way, shape, or form. And then I like the value add creation of subdivision, because it makes stuff that's unaffordable affordable, and that's the biggest caveat with that.
And I was going to say, even from just a pragmatic position, I like doing the entry-level 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500-foot ranch, because it just appeals to the biggest buyer pool. So it's our generation, the millennials, buying their first home, many of them, and then the downsizing boomers build or buy that. So in my mind, I just feel safest with these longer term plays where it takes some time and the market can change in 6 to 8 months, I feel I sleep well at night doing that sort of build because it's at the bottom of the market price wise as far as new construction. So there's almost no new construction available under 400. And so we'll be able to, at the highest, I've sold one of those at 398, at the lowest at 365. So right now they're selling around 375, 380. So, and then if it couldn't sell, it's very rentable as well.
Yeah. If you can't sell it at the price you want, you got to rent it.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
Exactly.
We don't make the rules here.
No, I wish. Yeah.
What's your opinion on the current state of the market? Have you seen any pullback, or you kind of mentioned your pricing pullback from the market highs, but have you seen anything relatively on your land sales and even on your building sales?
Okay, so let me kind of speak to the different parts of the country I'm doing business in. So in the Southeast and Florida and the Carolinas, that's been great for just making money, for just simple buying and selling. And I saw a slowdown for summer, but that's normal in Florida because so much of the population leaves and it's so hot. Did not see any slowdown in North Carolina. And to be determined, we got a couple offers this week on some Florida properties, so it seems to be picking up back to normal, but I'm not entirely sure. Was it normal summer slowdown, or is it going to remain slower? I'm not sure. We'll see. I still think if you're in the affordable parts, and especially the secondary markets or tertiary markets to these places that have just received so much population growth and so much infrastructure growth with new businesses, I think you'll be fine. A lot of these, especially in the Carolinas, man, a lot of these markets, you can still buy a new house for $250,000. And then on the flip side of that, people are moving and businesses are coming there. And so I'm like, man, it's hard to go wrong in those sorts of areas. So I have not seen any slowdown in the Carolinas. North Carolina especially is where I do a lot of business. Now switching to Colorado, where I've done the builds, and that's where all the rental properties are. No change in rentals. There was a little pullback from like the absolute peak in late 2021, 2022 in Colorado Springs and Pueblo, but really, really marginal. It's just not that you can rent every unit in 24 hours. It was just crazy for a while. So not really any pullback in rents. As far as the spec builds, there was a big pullback in 2023. And I had issues with my former contractor where he's not a bad guy. He just kind of fell apart and he couldn't manage the subs and he was too soft. They would push him around too much and beat him up. And so anyways, definitely saw a pullback. The prices came down substantially, probably that would be 10-ish%. And that's mostly rebounded where it's not quite at peak, but it's close to peak. So I'm going to do these single family spec builds leading into next spring. So it's the best time of year to sell them. And I fully expect those to go well. So all that to say, other than in the Southeast, I'm seeing just more normalcy, right? Seasonality's back. Like in Florida, Colorado, things will slow down as we get past the little fall rush here. Inventory is still low-ish, but more normal. So I think just more of a normal market anywhere that I'm doing business.
What's your ratio to like land to other things? Are you doing more land like 80%, 90%?
Yeah, so there's two buckets in my mind where the land is the way to make money, and then the rentals are a way to shelter that money, shelter that income, of course, legally. And then I think of them almost like savings accounts that somebody else is filling for me for the future, like my 401k. And then also, of course, they appreciate ideally over the long term. So the rentals, I just let all the income from those just go into the accounts, their respective accounts. I don't touch any of that. That's just, oh shit money, I kind of call it. So the land business is all the active, and I think of that as everything. So
what's the ratio? Like 60-40, 70-30?
60, I guess I have 26 different rental units. So they just sit in the income sits in their respective accounts. So I'm not buying rentals every month. I bought 2 fourplexes this year and then this duplex that'll be built. So those will be the properties I bought and or built and kept this year. As far as land flips, should do 70-ish, maybe 75 this year.
Oh, wow. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's a lot of volume. How big is your team?
Me and then 2 acquisition guys. And then we've got a part-time cold caller starting on Monday. But also do some deal financing. That's what Mason and I do together. So that kind of outsources acquisition for some of these deals.
What do you mean by deal financing?
Well, tons of people that follow us will get land deals under contract. They'll be new and they'll have no means of closing it. And so they'll bring it to us and we'll provide the capital and then do some sort of a joint venture.
Nice. I noticed there's a lot of I noticed that came up, this type of strategy came up like 2 years ago. I've seen it a lot in the last year, and especially the last like 6 to 12 months. There's been a lot of that capital coming into the marketplace. They understand land a little bit better, and they're jumping into deal funding. And I think it's a great resource because there's a lot of wholesalers that don't have capital. There's a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this. I'd be curious what you're seeing, what you're doing, because this is still a bottleneck. There's a deal I'm thinking about right now, speaking to the subdivides in eastern Colorado, where it's sitting on the market, but to really do everything that would need done, it would probably be a couple $1 million. And forget about that one. There's tons of examples like this. And so I'm working on raising money at more of a scale, just because once you said this too on our show, once you get to a certain scale where you're in the millions, the profit is sitting right there. You just have to be able to put the money together and structure it properly. So, what are you doing in your business to raise money at scale, but also do so in a safe way where you don't have a huge balloon coming if it doesn't sell right? What do you think?
So all of our stuff, and this is a great question for everybody here listening. That's a great question. But we try not to get too heavy on the buy price. We use seller financing and long escrows to kind of maneuver and control that flow. So we've never put $1 million into one project. It just doesn't happen. So those multi-million-dollar parcels that need that injection, we're just not ready for there. And I think you kind of hit it nail on the head a second ago, is that the capital at that level is few and far between. So you really have to build up the confidence of that capital to kind of outlay what the projections look like, because the biggest thing with capital that operate at that size is they like to make sure they're secure. Yeah. So I've raised a lot of capital that want to do small stuff. So the small land flips under 300,000, I have a couple 7 figures for it to keep rolling into transactions. But the stuff that when you get a little bit bigger there, they don't have the appetite for it yet. And we're kind of opening that door currently to see how it opens up. But essentially, we have one lender that's open to it, and all the rest like doing small stuff. So it's more meeting the right person on that side. That's because essentially when you get to that level, you have to meet a development family office or development fund that's going to back you. And that's just the only way you're going to find that type of capital, because the banks ain't going to do it, and one rich individual person most likely is going to do it. It's going to be some type of institution.
Yeah, and this is something we've run into where we've talked to people that are in or represent family offices, and a lot of times the minimum for them is 10 million or 5 million at the minimum. And so there's kind of a gap there where if you need 1.5, there's not a lot of people doing that, which creates an opportunity. Absolutely.
You're 100% correct. It's like that. I equate it to that threshold in multifamily where you have all these mom and pops at like 4 to 50 units, 5 to 50 units. They love playing there, and they're playing there at that moment, because once you go over 50, it's very institutional, and you're fighting people that they're well capitalized and have good balance sheets and all that stuff. So you really have to fight for that transaction. So they can pick up a lot of 5 to 50 units pretty easily.
Yep. And it's more inefficient though than I think other real estate assets, where there's more of an opportunity. There's huge spreads to be had because just very few people are providing capital or can put the capital together for their own deals in that kind of mid tier. So yeah, it's interesting. It's exciting.
Absolutely. There's a wide open space for it. And if somebody figures it out, they're going to be in the money for a lot of different places, because there's capital needs for that asset type and that asset class, and especially that amount type everywhere, from Texas to Colorado to Florida, you name it. There's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of potential tracks that fit that parameter. Now, what's the ROI and return and city and timeline and all that other stuff? I mean, it's dependent on each municipality, but it's going to be that's where the hang up is for sure. But there's a big wide open space for us. I hope somebody here listening reaches out to Dan or I about that opportunity, because there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of opportunity there, and it's going to take. The problem is it takes two to 5 years to work out. So somebody going along for the ride. Who knows?
Can you specify? You mean dealing with cities and municipalities to do so, or what were you referring to there?
So generally, it depends on your state too, but generally you're going to be in like California. You're going to be doing paperwork for 3 years.
Oh yeah.
You're going to be doing paperwork for 3 years, and you're going to be doing building and vertical construction or horizontal construction for another 2 to 3 years. So it's a 5-year play, 6-year play. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you do some places like Texas, maybe Colorado, maybe like Florida, you might get that down to 3 to 5 years, but 3 years on the minimum. So you really have to, and there's a lot of uncertainty during that 3 years.
Yep. Well, okay, so this is something I learned from my older friend that I told you about. We're finding these places that the demand is there, but it's much easier to get these things done. So like where I do these new builds in Pueblo West, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get a permit. I spend $2,000 for the engineering, and then you don't even have to be licensed to do so. Let me lay this out. You need an engineer for the trusses, but the lumber company does that. They have that in-house, so that's easy enough. You don't need any license to do the actual house plan. I could draw it, so I hire a designer and I pay him $500 for the house plan, $200 for the plot plan, and then the engineer I pay to do the foundation and the soils is $2,000, and it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get a permit. And we're on track to build this thing in somewhere between 4 and 5 months. So finding places like that where there's still demand and it's not, Hickstown where nothing's going on. It's the same sort of thing with these parcels, eastern Colorado I'm talking about. A lot of the counties east of Denver, east of Castle Rock and Colorado Springs, if you stay 35 acres or bigger, by right, you can do a well and you can subdivide these multi-100 acre parcels to 35s just by doing the survey, right, redoing the plat, all the legal descriptions, recording it yourself. And so you can get these things done very, very quickly, and then the builds are easy because you can drill a well by right and septic. And so I've always tried to target places where the process is very easy like that. And so in both of those contexts can deploy a lot of capital and get it done much quicker than some of these areas you're talking about, God forbid in California. So finding those failed subdivisions have been amazing, where all utilities are in place, no horizontal work needs done. And there's a lot of those around the country.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of those. They just ran out of money. And I think there's a lot of fear because people are out of money. So they're afraid they're not going to hit money targets, and they're afraid that somebody's going to start holding the bag, which is a lot of risk, 100%. I think the play where you're doing exempt subdivides and building, I think those are 100% the better option. But we're at what price point? That's for if you do 35 acre tract with a house, you're hitting that $500,000 price point, and there is buyers for that. There definitely is. But when you get to more expensive land, you're gonna, even with a larger tract, like even with stuff we do in Texas, let's say it's 10,000 an acre, we're doing a subdivide. It's going to be 100,000, and you build something. Now we're into the 400s or 500s. We're hitting that same price point. So if you're at a high price per acre area, you're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a problem. Is what it is. So then you have to outweigh if you go the county route and doing density. What's the timeline for that? What's the timeline for roads? What's the timeline for paperwork? And that's what we're seeing. So we're doing a project now in Poteet, and it is extensive. It's been long and it's been taxing.
Yeah. Can hear it in your voice. Yeah.
It's been taxing. So we're learning through it ourselves, but we got really good terms. We got really good funding on it, and like I said, we're trying to work out through the timelines. But it's, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But there's potential 10 figures on it, 9 figures.
Okay. Yeah. Not 10 figures. I think that's $1 billion.
No. Wait, 6. I don't even know. I forget my math.
8 would be 10 million. 9 would be 100 million.
It's like 7 to 8 figures. 7 to 8 figures.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's like that 8 to 11 range. It could go up to. So
Nice. Excellent.
I don't
Yeah.
know. You
Yeah.
know, it's very nerve wracking because, like I said,
Mhm.
you have that uncertainty. We have experience in big land, but not sub entitlement land. So it's just
Mhm.
breaking barriers and breaking ceilings and all the stuff that come with that. And it's just
Sure.
it's a little nerve wracking.
Definitely. Definitely. And that's, I think, something that's good to highlight. I've been uncomfortable since I started my business pretty much nonstop all the time. Like, if you're growing a business, you're uncomfortable almost all the time. I'm sure you can relate to that.
Absolutely. I think when you get comfortable and complacent, you get left behind. And not that you have to be comfortable and complacent all the time. I think if you're growing in your growing stages, I think you got to welcome it and take it on head on. Because even stepping out of college or working a W-2 for somebody else, stepping into entrepreneurship, you're got to get uncomfortable, breaking barriers in your own business, quitting your job, getting uncomfortable. So you got to be careful getting uncomfortable, and it's just the bottom line. You're not going to last very long in business if you're not getting uncomfortable really quick.
Yeah. Agreed.
What is a quote that is yours or somebody else's that you resonate with?
Mistakes love a rush decision. Alex Hormozy always says that. And that has stuck with me. It was a podcast early last year about his money rules. And that one, there's so many times I tend to be the type that makes decisions too quickly naturally and jumps into things too quickly. And so that one I think about a lot. Mistakes love a rush decision.
I think there's definitely a balance to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes, especially in this business, in real estate in general, you have to make quick decisions. You have to, or else you miss opportunity.
Sure.
So I think that scale might differ for different people in different types of businesses. Because we have to make quick decisions. That's the bottom line. We have to make quick decisions. We're not going to do very much business if we don't make quick decisions. And some are a little bit more methodical, and you kind of have the opportunity to think about it more. But sometimes it comes up, and you're like, you got to jump on that. We have to right now.
True.
Today.
Very true.
Where can people find you online? I have your website, which is danhaberkost.com. Do you have any other places you can send people? Yeah,
just anywhere that any of the socials, Dan Haberkost. Feel free to reach out, anything land, and happy to talk to you.
Absolutely. For everybody here, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your time. Thanks, Dan, for coming on. I think we had a great conversation. I hope you all like, share, subscribe, share with a friend. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.